Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello, hello, hello. It is Friday night, and it's time for Paranormal Review Radio with me, Anthony Agati, and the lovely Lucy Liebfried.
Hey, Anthony. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm glad this week is over. It was a rough week at work. How are you tonight?
Me too. I am so glad to be here on the air with you and with everyone listening. Hello to everybody in the chat room.
You know, before we get into the show, I wanted to say something. One of the reasons I started this show was not just to talk about the paranormal, but to be able to connect with people that were interested in the paranormal. You know, it's one thing to be able to go out and investigate and collect great evidence, but to be able to share that with someone is a whole different level, and that's why I'm grateful to have you there with me, Lucy. But not only you, but all our listeners too. And one in particular that I wanted to acknowledge, Mateo. Mateo has been listening and following the show from the very start. He tweets our messages and our show every week on his own, and he emails us and let us know how we're doing and how he appreciates the topics that we discuss. So on behalf of Lucy and I, and in front of everyone listening tonight, we want to send you our heartfelt thank you. It means a lot to us, and we hope you continue to listen to the show.
Thank you so much, Mateo. Okay, we have a great show tonight, but first, let's share how you can participate in tonight's show. As always, our phone lines are open, so give us a call. We want to hear your thoughts and your questions. The number to call in is 661-244-9831. And if we don't get to you right away, please stay on the line, and we'll get to you as soon as we can. Also, our chat room is open. Feel free to interact with us or make new friends. And lastly, our Facebook page, Paranormal Review Radio, has some great follow-up information, daily paranormal news, and fun insights. So come on by and like our page. One more thing. Please stay tuned later on in the show, as Anthony and I will be revealing some news regarding an incident with a paranormal celebrity. Now, that's all I'm going to say for now, so just stay tuned till later on. Anthony, let's start the show.
Lucy, I want to repeat the words that were used to describe our next guest's book, Bloodstains. Imagine your grandfather dying and leaving you the secret memoirs of H.H. Holmes, one of the worst serial killers involved in some of the most famous murders of all time. The first to be called a serial killer, the monster suspected of committing many of history's most terrifying crimes and still unsolved mysteries. Discovering you are the great-great-grandson of Herman Mudgett, a.k.a. H.H. Holmes, the infamous proprietor of Chicago's Murder Castle, where hundreds of innocent young women were tortured by the mass murderer during the Chicago World's Fair before the turn of the century. Suddenly realizing you may be the direct descendant of Jack the Ripper, one of history's most perplexing unsolved mysteries. The doctor, mad scientist, evil genius, the worst of all serial killers, protagonist of the Holmes Curse, all rolled into one devilish ball, seeing his eyes each time you looked into the mirror, knowing your written destiny was to fill the mass murderer's shoes. The person I just described that has been handed this overwhelming gift is none other than Mr. Jeff Mudgett. Jeff wrote a book called Bloodstains, which has been described as a masterpiece and an insight into pure evil. Jeff's search and discovery regarding his great-great-grandfather Herman Mudgett, better known as H.H. Holmes, is eerily described in this book and is a must-read with the lights on. Jeff is here tonight with us to discuss his search, the diaries, and the paranormal-related aspects he has encountered during his plight for the truth. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Jeff Mudgett. Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Anthony, how are you? And Lucy, I've been looking forward to being on your show for a long time, and I tell you, that was the best preview of my book I've ever heard on any of the radio shows I've been on. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
You're quite welcome, Jeff. Welcome. I had the pleasure of meeting you at the Chicago Ghost Conference last September. I heard you speak at that event, and I was immediately enthralled by the story and by your book. Now, I had been aware of H.H. Holmes before your talk, but your story was amazing, and you were kind enough to give me a signed copy of the book, and, we've been friends ever since.
Exactly right. I can remember you at the show, and that was the first public speaking event I had about Bloodstains and the story, and you were there. You could see it wasn't scripted. It wasn't practiced. I stood up and gave my heart to the audience, and quite frankly, I didn't know if it was well received or not until I walked off the stage and out, and then it was a great day for me, and I will never forget it.
Well, I'm so happy that I was there to be part of it. Jeff, some of our listeners tonight may not be aware of who Herman Mudgett, also known as H.H. Holmes, was. Can you start off by explaining who the book is about?
Probably the easiest way to describe him is he is the subject of that great book by Eric Larson called The Devil in the White City, which, they're making the movie of now with Leonardo DiCaprio starring my great-great-grandfather. He was the evil genius, I guess, is the easiest way to describe him. The one, as Anthony told, that they coined the phrase serial killer for, because nothing else fit him. He was so bad. He was pure evil and a monster. And I always fall back on that word monster, because most crime writers, reserve monster for the worst above fiends, beasts, or phantoms. And he certainly fits the phrase. And imagine at 40 years old finding out outside your pretty much normal life that all of a sudden your grandfather had kept this secret from the entire family, including his wife. And that one night at dinner, we were all notified of who we were directly related to, and it was the worst you could possibly imagine.
Wow. The first few chapters of the book, you do explain the unraveling portion of the news and how you found out about him. Before that, had you heard anything, any inkling about what was coming?
None whatsoever, other than my grandmother was fascinated with our lineage. She had hired a very expensive company to run it down. She, thinking that we were related to the great Civil War General Robert E. Lee, they came to her one day and told her, and they actually used the old term "let sleeping dogs lie." They fibbed a little bit about the story, telling her that it was a Arkansas horse thief who had been hung after being arrested, and that life should go on. Well, my brother, who was a curious sort, found out and did a little more research, and at that dinner was teasing my grandfather about how it extended more than just stealing horses. And that's when my grandfather, who was a very quiet, stoic man, exploded at the table and admitted the truth and how his family had all moved from Chicago and New Hampshire to California to escape the stigma and start a new life. And that's what happened. And that's when I, sitting there at that table, watched my grandmother staring at her husband for 50 years and realizing that had he told her the truth, she probably wouldn't have married him.
Wow.
So it was quite a story just to get to that point, and that story. I became very curious about the facts. I started reading anything I could put my hands on about the killer. That curiosity became an obsession, and as I explain in the book, that obsession became a struggle for my very sanity and even survival.
Mhm. Now, I know there are many people out there who will say, if I had a relative like this in my family tree, I definitely would not announce it to the world. What do you say to that, and what made you write this book and expose your dark family history?
That's a great question, and it's the one that I most look forward to answering. I'm the first of my family that wanted to tell the truth. Quite frankly, when I wrote the book and published it, I had some problems with certain family members about it. They wanted to know why I would have done that, like you asked. I told them, listen. There's books coming out now that are on the top of the New York Times bestseller list. There's a $200 million Warner Brothers movie coming out. I want to be the one that tells the real story and maybe the truth instead of just something that Hollywood's interested in making $1 billion from. And also, as you probably realize, Lucy and Anthony, history has pretty much allowed Holmes to escape an investigation into how any man could have been so evil and how God could have allowed him to exist as he did with the gifts that he had. And that's what I was interested in telling this story about.
Well, as I was reading this book, it's very obvious that he was brilliant, that he was absolutely brilliant. But do you feel that he was born evil? I mean, do you truly believe that he was destined to murder and kill?
When you read the chapter that I included about when he was 6 years old, and I don't want to tell too much of the story for your listeners, except that you'll remember it was the event that he had the episode with the pastor at the church. I doubt that I've known any other child that could have reacted like he did to such a horrible event occurring to them. So I think he was evil. I think he was born evil. I don't think anything could have been done to change him. He had the intellect. He had one of the highest IQs ever recorded at the University of Michigan Medical School. He invented drugs and chemicals. I mean, that's way out there past anything I'm capable of or anybody I've ever known was capable of. He decided, fully knowing what evil, what good was, how he could have changed his life and the paths he could have taken. He made conscious decisions to go the direction he did, and he never looked back. That's what he wanted to do. And I think we throw around too many phrases these days like psychotics and psychosis, those type of things. He wasn't mentally ill. He was just evil, in my opinion.
Jeff, do you believe that he very possibly could be possessed?
That I would have, before I finished writing the book, I would have immediately answered no, Lucy. But as I'm sure we're going to discuss, in the book I described going down into the basement of the post office in Chicago at 63rd and Wallace, where Holmes's murder castle was, where he killed so many people and tortured, where so much pain was unleashed on the world. And when I came out of there, I believed different things about paranormal, about ghosts, about spirits, about even God. And I don't know. You may be correct. I don't know much about possession. I don't know much about who the devil is. But if it is possible, what you've raised, he is the one that would have fit the bill.
So you briefly mentioned the episode that happened at a young age. Do you think that this episode possibly could have fueled his passion for killing?
You know, when I wrote that chapter, and I'm sure you remember, that was my initial response to hearing what happened to him, you know, as a 6-year-old boy, which all men know is their worst possible nightmare. I actually was quite happy, Lucy, that here was a reason for his evil and the life that followed, and it had nothing to do with the genes that I shared with him, because quite frankly, I started growing nervous about my mannerisms and, you know, sharing his blood and the genes. So when this event came to my mind, it gave me an out saying, aha, here's the reason why he was what he was. But then the end of that chapter, I explained how he, at 6 years old, instead of going home to Mommy and crying about what happened to him, was figuring out as he walked home how to use it to take advantage of the community. And I tell you, I've never heard of anyone that young being that logical about such a horrible event.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we go any further, can you explain why this book is labeled fiction based on a true story?
Yes. It was a result of a number of meetings with I was a practicing attorney before I wrote the book. I had a meeting with my lawyer, with a couple of old colleagues, and we decided that it would be best for me to call it based on a true story to allow me to raise the conjecture that I had. There were many gaps in the story. I didn't have fillers like when I get to the part about trying to prove that he was also Jack the Ripper, those things. I take nonfiction as a serious phrase in the literary world. I know it's abused these days, as we all recall on the Oprah show, but that's not me. That's not me. And what we decided to do was let's leave it based on a true story. I do the best I can, and then we go after and prove what's in the story through architecture and through DNA and through the exhumation of his grave, things like that, and proving through evidence that he was Jack the Ripper. So one other thing, we're also dealing with murders that have no statute of limitations. We didn't know whether certain materials might be confiscated if we called it nonfiction, and we decided to go that route until maybe later.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered your question, but I can't go much more detail than that anyway.
Actually, no, you did. So right now, there's many books that do say that Herman Mudgett was hung in 1896. Are you able to elaborate on your theory that he actually was not hung?
That's one of the most interesting portions of the story, and the one that gives me the most, excitement, because my theory that it isn't him in that concrete grave, it wasn't him that was hung that day that all the other authors write about, is one day we will be able to exhume the concrete in Philadelphia. We will dig it up. It will be chipped away from the remains, and we will do a DNA test comparing the tissue inside with my tissue, and we'll be able to stand up and say, see, we told you it wasn't him. And there's no guesswork. There's no hit or miss. It'll be 100% that it is or it isn't H.H. Holmes. We actually have a cable channel now, a studio in Hollywood, who's interested in putting that on live TV. And we were discussing budgets about how much something like that would cost, and they didn't balk at the very high number that's involved in the process and the exhumation and the DNA testing. It'll take a year, but they want to do it on TV, so I'm pretty excited about it.
Wow.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's something to look forward to. You know what? Reading all of this, and, you mentioned the Holmes Curse. Is it real, or is it something supernatural or paranormal, as people say it is?
See, and that's Lucy, that's one of the reasons why I never believed he was hung in the first place. There is a very high number of people involved in the arrest, the trial, and the supposed hanging of Holmes who had terrible death or terrible misfortune visited upon them after he was supposedly dead. And I didn't believe it was possible through supernatural entities. And that led me to start investigating each fact, digging them all up. And the more we dug up, the more it looked a little bit silly. And the things that Holmes did and the things that he had the judge allow him to do based on giving money to charities sounded fishy. And as we did more and more of that and came to realize, there was no pathology report. He was allowed to have a hood on, things like that. The Pinkerton guards were hired. As soon as the body came down off the scaffolding, he was thrown into the coffin, and concrete was thrown right over him. No one has ever heard of that being done, any other one. It was dragged to the cemetery by a mule team, put into a 10-foot hole, and filled with 10 feet of concrete over the concrete that was with the body in the coffin. Then he hired the Pinkertons, who were the best detectives in the country at the time, to stand guard for 2 nights while the concrete was drying. I knew him, not personally, but his mind. He had he couldn't have cared less about what happened to his body after death. He didn't believe in afterlife. He didn't care what happened to the carbons. It wouldn't have concerned him at all. He did it because he knew that body would have been dug up. They had already offered him $20,000 or $30,000 for his brain to study in medical science. He refused it. He knew that if the body had been buried normally, it would have been dug up by the grave robbers. They would have found out it wasn't him, and you would have had the greatest manhunt in history, maybe since Abraham Lincoln's assassination.
Now, Jeff, I have a question that I'm sure may be on the minds of all of our listeners. Did Herman Mudgett ever explain why he murdered?
I'm trying to think if I have an explanation. He enjoyed going to the extremes of the human condition, especially with pain, and seeing how far humans would go to give up, to escape the pain that he was putting on them through torture down in the basement. He loved to see if he could get, the love at his side. Lucy will tell you in the book about when he visited the bullfighter after the bullfight, those type of things. He loved to push that human condition and see how far he could take it. I don't know. One of the things I tried to do, Anthony, was define what evil meant in the book. And quite frankly, there's no definition of what it is. It's the opposite of good, quite frankly. It's about as far as I could get, the veto of a moral code. But this man had something in him that we all don't have, and it's what makes him, in my opinion, some sort of subspecies, and what bothered me so much about finding out I was directly related to him.
Well, finding out that you're a relative of one of the most horrible murders in history is, I'm sure, a life-changing thing. But, we're hearing that now there's a new twist, and you mentioned it before, and possibly a connection that Herman Mudgett, your great-great-grandfather, may actually be the real Jack the Ripper. Can you tell us more about this and why you think that this may be true?
Well, sure. I knew that, reading about him in his materials, that he liked to go to London, he liked to go to Paris, he liked to go to Berlin. He was a fabulously wealthy man. He learned he was probably the finest purveyor of insurance fraud there was, and selling organs and skeletons to the medical schools in America. He had assistants with him when he traveled. He traveled the finest ships. He hung with the Astors, things like that. He was an elegant man who dressed to the nines, and he could fit into any dinner party and just come away with the women thinking he was the finest thing they'd ever seen, and the men wanting to be his friend for the rest of their lives. So I knew that he traveled to the continent a lot, and we started looking at the evidence about when he bought his property in Chicago, for the murder castle, and it was in the summer of '88. He didn't start building until the fall of '89, or the spring of '89. And we knew that he had made a trip over on a ship called the Etruria, and that one of the medical schools in London had an American doctor come to them and offer a skeleton for display in their medical school, and that's what Herman used to make a lot of money doing in the States. We started tracking it down, and more, it seemed to be a very logical solution to the mystery, because what most of the suspects that come out now, it's like the new one now that there's a fellow that says the Ripper was a woman.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was on a radio show this morning, and we had a discussion about whether that was possible in Victorian London. So when we looked at the pathology reports, all of a sudden they have doctors there in London saying, wait a minute, the first 2 or 3 murders, the first 2 or 3 Ripper murders, there were organs removed from the bodies in the fog in London from the street in 4 or 5 minutes' time without damaging any bordering organs. They had uteruses removed, they had kidneys removed, things like that. They said it had to have been a surgeon, a medical expert to have done it. And that's what most of these suspects lack. You have one fellow called in this morning and said that his father had proved who the Ripper was, and it was a fellow that cleaned fish in the harbor. Well, it's a long way, as you both know. It's a long way from cleaning fish to removing a woman's organ, uterus. So
yeah.
Right.
Now Scotland Yard contacted me and said that they had long believed that it was a doctor who had committed the first 2 or 3 murders in London. The 4th or 5th were copycats, probably committed by somebody else, they said. So I've always been off on the theory that it had to have been, a surgical expert, someone with a lot of practice, and that certainly fits the MO of H.H. Holmes while he was in London. And we just started putting it all together. Well, about 5 months after I published the book, I had a gentleman named Mark Potts contact me who said that he had forensic evidence that it was H.H. Holmes. He brought handwriting that Holmes had done while he was in prison awaiting hanging. Holmes committed, when he was waiting to be hung, he had every newspaper article there was, they came into the cell, he did interviews, he ran the show. It was quite an amazing story to watch in the New York Times, the Tribune. It's great articles that still exist, and they're fun, and they're exciting to read. But he did most of these interviews in his own hand. So they took these handwritten articles and they gave it to the British Library, who compared it with their expert with the Dear Boss and the From Hell letters that, were the supposedly the Jack the Ripper letters, which no one has been able to prove that the letters were written by the same guy that had the scalpel or not. But their expert came back and said, there's no doubt in her mind this is the same handwriting. Well, we took that conclusion and that evidence to a company in Buffalo, at the University of Buffalo, who works for the Post Office and the Department of Justice, who created a computer program that also compares handwriting. Each letter has 1 million dots on it, and they run it through the machine, and the machine comes out with a number, and off that number, their results are amazing, which criminal courts are using now for evidence. Well, they came back with a conclusion, a 97% conclusion that the handwriting was the same. So, for the first time in a long time, you have forensic evidence that Holmes was there. We know we can place him there in London, and that he was involved in the episode. He wrote these letters. And actually, it gets to a point where if you had to take it to a trial, you probably could get away with proving it beyond a reasonable doubt. The only problem is now with the Ripper mystery, everyone wants absolute truth who this was, and it's because it's a billion-dollar industry in Hollywood, in writing, and in the tours that go on in London.
Do you think that the people of London are trying to sort of keep the Jack the Ripper in their land as sort of their mascot for possible fame and fortune or whatever would come with it? Maybe that's the reason why they may be discrediting any of the discoveries that you're making?
Anthony, I don't think they want it to be an American doctor.
That's what it sounds like to me.
I've been interviewed by the big papers here in the States. The BBC's never asked to see my evidence. They've never asked to have me send a copy of the book. And it always kind of struck me as strange that they would do that. But then I found out the BBC was sponsoring a miniseries that just came out now that they had been filming for 2 years in Ireland about Jack the Ripper. So, who knows?
In your book, Jeff, you talk about hearing Herman's voice in your head. Do you feel that he may be trying to communicate with you from the beyond?
The book, as I explain in the book, Anthony, the obsession became, I developed epilepsy to where, at least that's what the doctors told me.
Right.
The doctor started explaining that these voices and visions I was having about Herman had to do with my obsession into the subject matter, which my brain had taken, overloaded, resulted in the seizures, and then played back with these images and voices that I created with this knowledge. That's what these neurologists, and I had many of them, would tell me. When I would back them into a corner and ask them to explain, how then do you explain him talking or telling me about things, asking me to check them out to verify them, and then me going down and finding out the facts were true that I'd never seen before in my life? And,
right.
None of them could answer that question. So I let the readers make their own mind up whether, they want to believe that there is, a paranormal, a supernatural side to this, or it is a condition of an overload to my brain.
One of the most eloquent paragraphs in your book was the moment and the incident upon first opening the diary, and you described the musty ammonia-like smell. It's my favorite piece of the book. What was going through your mind as you finally convinced yourself to basically open it and start reading? What was going through your mind at that time?
Anthony, I was a practicing criminal lawyer. I had a healthy skepticism for any theories about mysteries and supernatural events. I didn't believe. I was a doubter, naysayer, and I wanted to do my best to prove that it was wrong and it was a fraud. And the more I dug into it, the more, I went all over the country. I went to the National Archives. I went to the graveyards. I went to I was the first, it was amazing to me, I was the first one to write the story about Holmes that actually went down into the basement at the post office where the murder castle was.
Right.
Those type of things. And we followed his path around on his life to try to dig up the fact. One of the most interesting things we found out, Lucy, was that you can't assume any facts you read from other books or sources or legend. One of the ones, and in my first printing of the book, I had it wrong in my book too, because I assumed that the previous writers had it right when they said that the murder castle burned to the ground at the turn of the century after he was hung. Well, one day I had a man deliver me a picture with the murder castle at 63rd and Wallace in Inglewood with a 1936 pickup truck parked next to it. So when I received that, I decided right then and there I was not assuming any facts in existence anymore. They all had to be dug up. They all had to be verified. And the more we started doing that, the more we found that most of them were wrong or had been generated by Holmes himself into the newspaper articles that he had fed facts to. And it's quite fascinating. I might have got away from your question. If you want to tickle my memory a little bit, I can get back to it.
What was going on? What was going through your mind when you first started to decide to open up the diaries and read it? When you finally opened it up, or actually the moment before you opened it up, were you doubting yourself? Were you fighting yourself, on whether or not to open it and start reading?
Well, I still had the problem. I had I'm 40 years old, and my grandfather had maybe said 2 words to me my whole life. I had a healthy hatred for this man, and then he was a wealthy man when he died. His will was 2 paragraphs, and the only item in it was that he wanted his tackle boxes to be left to me, the grandson that he had no interest in whatsoever. So they sat in my garage for years before I developed the interest to go over and open them up. And that was only because my mother talked me into it. Falling back a little bit, the man loved to fish, my grandfather. When I was a little boy, right. I loved to fish. My grandfather never invited me fishing. Imagine as a grandson never be inviting fishing by your grandfather. So my mother convinced me that the tackle boxes were his way of inviting me fishing after he died. So I let her talk me into that, and I finally opened them up. And like when I found the secret inside them, what the story is all about, it changed my life. Because imagine all of a sudden realizing that the only reason you're alive on the earth today is because of the conscious decisions of the most evil man that ever lived. And while most people might think, hearing that now on the radio, they could just blow that off if they had been me. And I did at first. It wears on you. It starts ticking. It starts climbing up. Every mannerism, every little thing you do, you start wondering if it had anything to do with the monster. And then when we all have strange thoughts. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know mental science well, but I know that we all have thoughts that we're not proud of. We all have impulses to react violently at times or poorly. And when you all of a sudden have a basis for these kinds of thoughts because of who you come from, and you're here because of the decisions he made, it changes the way you look at things, little things like that.
Jeff,
right.
You said that your mother convinced you to open up the tackle box. Do you think that she had an idea that what was in there, or was it just her trying to get you to become closer to your grandfather?
Lucy, I had an incredible relationship with my mother, still do. She doesn't like any family member to have a hatred for another family member. It just goes against her grain, and she just, she didn't know what was inside, but she knew that it was there was an effort there that he had written in his will that he wanted me to have these boxes. Well, obviously not for the fishing gear. It was for the secret inside them. So, and I don't want to tell too much of the story because you've read the book, but there was a secret inside the Holmes diaries that involved my grandfather and involved me. So there was a reason it was given to me instead of my cousins and brothers and sisters. Yeah.
And that's a huge twist to the story. So, yeah, we're not going to mention that at all. You have to go get this book, Bloodstains by Jeff Mudgett. You've mentioned before Murder Castle. what was the basis, or what was the reasoning why he built the murder castle?
You know, that's the fascinating part of the story for me, and from what I understand, Anthony, Warner Brothers is constructing from ground up a mock-up of the murder castle for their movie, and I just can't wait to see it. It's going to be incredible. And they say DiCaprio just is 100% committed to doing his finest role ever as Holmes. I think he's going to do a good job. But Holmes knew, to get back to your question, Holmes knew that the World's Fair was coming to Chicago. It was the biggest event in the history of man, maybe. You were going to have, you had 27 million people visit it. You had one day, 700,000 visited it. Holmes planned out the transportation system, Anthony. He bought a piece of property through manipulation and murder that I describe in the book, but he bought a piece of property at a place called Junction Grove, which was named Junction Grove because this is where the railroad tracks dissected from downtown Chicago to make the turn to go out to the park. He knew most of the people that went to that fair were going to go buy his piece of property. He built a hotel. The first floor was a pharmacy and a bar. The second floor was a hotel. The third floor was his living quarters. The basement was his place to conduct torture and experiment on the human condition. He sat there like a spider in a web. He knew that the ones that the kids, the young women that came from all over the world, actually all over the world and around the country, there was no way to communicate with their family. They all thought they were going to this beautiful place in Chicago, and here they were having to go by this maybe the most, Harper's Magazine called 63rd and Wallace the place that God allowed evil to run amok. They also said that if the paranormal was ever going to be proven, it would be proven at that spot. So here he was, the spider with a web, and all these young kids went through there late at night, and they knew the park was closed, and all of a sudden, wow, here's this beautiful hotel ready to take me and let me have a nice night's sleep and a breakfast, and then I go to the greatest event of my entire life the next day. Well, many of them never made it.
Well, there's a post office, I believe, that's located there now on the original site of the murder castle. And I think you've mentioned before that you've gone there before. Do you believe it to be haunted? Do you believe that there are the spirits there possibly of the victims of Herman?
Well, I write about it at chapter 27. I tell you, most of the employees at the post office believe it's haunted. They do not use the basement. They sealed it off. When we went in there the first day, it took us 4 hours to get permission to go into the basement, and we had to crack open the door down the stairs because it had been painted over. They had so many alarms down there, and they had, in the federal government, when you have an alarm on a post office building, you've got to file reports and things like that. They just sealed it off. When we went down into the basement, you could see that it hadn't been used in a long time. It was dirty. It was hadn't been. There was no custodian labor down there. When I first went down, I didn't believe in ghosts. I didn't believe in the supernatural. I didn't even believe in God. An hour later, when I came back out, I believed in all three. It was a horrible event. I went immediately back to my doctor and explained the things that I had seen and heard down in the room, and he described it as a seizure. And then, we're right back to the story and about whether the readers want to believe whether what I saw was real or whether it was a condition of my mishap and my condition. But it's there. We're going to go, we're filming the first week in June. The History Channel is going to film me walking the basement of the post office. They're coming out with a new show called Fear Files, and they want this to be one of their first shows, and they have a full film crew. We've got permission from the post office to go back into the basement and film what we see and hear down there, and I'm quite excited.
Well, you know,
great.
Jeff, I am here in Chicago, and if you ever have extra room, we would love to go with you. I mean,
Okay.
this is amazing, because living here in Chicago and seeing the post office and just imagining what has gone on, and then after reading your description, it just boggles the mind when you look at this post office building and you just imagine what has transpired in this spot.
You can't imagine what has transpired in that spot, and it's horrible to admit that existed in America, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Then we have PBS wants to do a Geraldo Rivera type show. I'm meeting with them in June, and they're going to allow me to pick the A-team of all paranormal investigators, the best in the world, to set up a command center up on the main floor, and then have the basement set up with you guys know this stuff more than I do, the cameras and the sound devices, all the latest electronics, and film it overnight to see if we can get some evidence about something that goes on down there. Because I tell you, the employees at the post office have no doubt that it's haunted.
Wow, that's amazing.
So, Jeff, what are your next steps? Anything new in the quest? Anything that you're working on now?
Well, those events are the most upcoming, but the most exciting one was that what I was telling you before, that we have a studio that is willing, I think, to pay for the exhumation of the concrete in Philadelphia, and then I've been notified by the Smithsonian and the Natural History Museum in D.C. that they want to take possession. It's an American history piece, obviously, for a proper, I don't even know how you would term it. It's not an excavation, but to break the concrete away from the remains, and then to do a proper DNA comparison. And once we get that done, there's no more doubt, and I can stand up and say, okay, now that you all believe me, let's start breaking down the other things I've said in the book, and maybe we can take for serious that he was there in London in 1888 and put that mystery to rest, too.
Yeah,
I'm excited about that stuff.
Did anyone from the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, did anyone reach out to you to consult on the movie?
No. Have you read The Devil in the White City, Anthony?
No, I have not, no.
It's a great book. It's a great book. Eric Larson's a wonderful writer. He sold 3 million copies. I think it's an incredible story. But it is the normal Holmes story of Holmes being hung and put down, and executed. Well, when we come out and prove that it isn't him in the concrete, it's going to throw a monkey wrench into their story a little bit, and I don't know if they really want to. You know what? I don't really know what they're going to do about it, but it's a different story, and maybe, hopefully, they just think hopefully the DNA will show that it is Holmes. So I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to see what they do.
They're putting a lot of money into a wonderful story that I just can't wait to watch. So I don't know what they're going to do either. We had a writer call me to say that he thinks that my story could be like a modern day Silence of the Lambs, more based on me investigating who I was rather than the Holmes story. And he thought more people would be interested in that type of story rather than just a history story about some serial killer at the turn of the century. So it's gathering legs, and we started out invisible. The first 6 months, we sold I think 100 books, 200 books. It's selling books is a difficult thing to do in America now, and everyone thinks you have Amazon and it's just easy. Well, you're pretty much invisible for a long time. So now we've gathered a lot of steam, and now we're doing pretty well with it. And people are telling me they like reading the story, and it's fun to watch.
Well, you know what, Jeff? Honestly, it is a fascinating story. I really want to thank you for coming on here tonight. The book is called Bloodstains, everyone. And Jeff, can you tell our listeners where they can get the book?
Thanks, Lucy. It's you can go on Google and just type in Bloodstains, one word, and we're doing so well now. We're at the top of the first page, and click the link, and you go right to our website, and you can pick the book up in print, or you can go to Amazon and buy it on ebook for Amazon, and we sell it there for $2.99 a good cup of coffee. And if you have an ebook, but it's a good book to read in print, and I think you'll like your viewers will like the cover, the eyes staring out at you from the book. I had an interesting comment from a reader the other day saying that I had photoshopped the photo on the cover, and of course I haven't. But she said those eyes are not a human eyes; those are great white shark eyes. I got a kick out of that.
Anthony and I have both read the book, and I can truly say it's one of the most frightening books that I've ever read. It is definitely not something for the faint of heart, but when you do read it, you will not want it to end. Truly, I mean, it is just absolutely fascinating. So, Jeff, I do want to thank you, and I want to thank you for writing the book. I mean, really, we wish you the best of luck in your journey for the truth, and we'd love to have you come on again when you have a breakthrough in the search.
Well, thank you very much, and I would like to. And, Lucy, I'm going to take you up on your offer when I find out what the schedule is and when we're going to be going down into the basement. I'll let you know, and maybe you can drop by and maybe get to go down into the basement with us.
Oh! You know
that's so great.
You know that I'm there.
It's I'm
if
not.
I can sneak Anthony in, I'm going to sneak him in too.
I tell you,
I'll take the next flight out.
Okay, I tell you, it's I'm going to do it, but it's not my favorite thing in the world to think about going back down. I promised myself I never would, but I know I have to go down again to be on the show and to show to the world what that place. Oh, I know what I wanted to tell you. Do I have 30 seconds to tell you something else?
Yes,
sure.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, and this is something that is my obligation and my duty, and I'm just really proud to be able to do this. I actually wrote the White House and asked them for help getting permission to put a little monument out on the grass. You know, Lucy, on the post office there, they have the little grass outside. And I told the White House, I said, listen, all I need is your permission. I want to put a little monument. It will have nothing to do with Holmes. I gave him veto power over what it says, but I wanted to honor the victims, the young women that died there that no one's ever done anything for. And I got a positive response from the boss at the post office, so I'm really excited about maybe one day, putting a little monument there on the grass, which doesn't do enough, obviously, but at least my family can give something back for this horror that our descendant unleashed on the world.
Not just your family, but I think it's an action that I think truly reaches out to like you said, the women that lost their lives there. I think it's just something that's absolutely wonderful.
And Lucy, maybe we can have the right. I don't know how it's normally done. You both know more about it than I do, but maybe we have the right type of person come and maybe set them free. I don't know how that works, but maybe if we do the right thing, maybe it'll make a difference. I don't know, but I'd like to give it a try.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, if these poor spirits are still there, I mean, whatever can be done to help them move on, I think it would be a truly, truly wonderful thing to do. Jeff, thank you again so much. This has been absolutely fascinating. Anthony and I, like we said, anytime you want to come back, please do. Anytime you've got new information, thank you again, and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Take care and have a great weekend.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You still there, Lucy?
Yes, I am.
You didn't hide underneath the covers?
Oh, no, that is like, I'm telling you, this book is so, when you're reading it, you have to get this book. When you're reading this book, it is just going through this whole situation. And like you said, it is really interesting because it doesn't focus so much on Holmes himself, but it's the actual experience that Jeff has gone through. It's you can't put it down once you finish it. I mean, I've read it twice, and it took me. I finished it in like 2 days. It was just absolutely fascinating. Anthony, what did you think about it?
Yeah, I got it on my Kindle about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and just like you said, it does talk about H.H. Holmes, and it does give you, the facts about what he was really like, what he did, which is pretty gruesome, but it sets it at the tone and sort of the point of view of Jeff Mudgett, of finding out a family member. I mean, I can't even imagine that. Finding out a family member, that you are a descendant of someone who literally they coined as the first serial killer. I could not fathom that. I could not imagine having that discovery right in front of me and knowing that, and how do you live every day? How do you go about your life? And I think that's why I asked that question earlier to him, or no, I'm sorry, you did, about why would you announce it to the world? Why would you put this in writing and put it in the book? And I think he has guts, and I think he's got a determination. And I think it's sort of possibly sort of a self-healing for himself, to truly find out the truth. I mean, it always goes back to the things that we do, Lucy, and, we're always seeking the truth, trying to find out what is really out there. And for him, this was his quest. This was his life mission, is to find out the truth about his great-great-grandfather. And I commend him on his effort and his strive and dedication to going out there, looking under the rocks and sort of bouldering through things that have not been tackled before. And he's getting some headway. And I really wish him the best of luck in everything that he's doing. And, he's not only just battling here in America, but he's battling London as well. That's a pretty amazing feat, and so I commend his efforts for doing that.
Absolutely. I mean, the pressure of finding something out like that has got to be unbearable. I mean, it really has to be amazing to go through this. But you know what, Anthony, we have a caller in the queue. Do we have time to take a call real quick?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's see who this is. Hello, you're on with Anthony and Lucy.
Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Hi. Who is this?
It's Mateo.
Hi, Mateo.
Hey, Mateo. How are you?
How are you guys? I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Good. What's up?
Nothing much. You guys both read the book, and Miss Lucy, you had mentioned how much you enjoyed the book. I just wanted your guys' opinion on. Obviously, he was going to do terrible things. He wanted to do awful things to people and whatever. But I just wondered if you guys felt from the book if his motivation was more. I can't get over how smart he was. There's not really been a serial killer who had that much money and set up his life to meet that end, to do what he did. Do you think he was driven more by just the evil aspect of his personality, or do you think he was a little bit ahead of his time in thinking these people can't catch me if I do this? These people have no clue. Science and medical science is not advanced enough for me to do this, so I'm just going to raise hell.
Anthony, can I answer this? Because I do have a theory. Well, as I'm reading, okay, and it becomes very, very obvious from the beginning that this is a brilliant, brilliant man. As far as him being evil, yes, I do feel that he was evil, because as you read and you go forth, there is almost like this detachment. There's no remorse. It's almost like you can feel it. You go through the story and you can feel it. Now, as far as him being ahead of his time, there are some sections towards the end of the book and some things that Jeff does find out and he does reveal that really do. I mean, he was ahead of his time. Some of the things that part of this madness that he was doing and creating, when you read it, he absolutely was ahead of his time. Now, whether or not it factored into why he was doing it, I don't think it really had that much to do. But my personal feeling, I feel this guy was just plain evil.
Wow.
Well, Mateo, when I was reading the book, the first thing that came to my mind, and I'm sure everybody has watched this or has seen this movie, Silence of the Lambs. And, with Hannibal Lecter in that movie, he was very smart, very intellectual, very cunning, and also charismatic. And Jeff has mentioned that as well, that Herman Mudgett was a very charismatic man. He could basically look at any woman and get them to get, spaghetti in the knees. He had a way about himself. And, just like in the movie Silence of the Lambs, there was that personality and that charisma. But then on the other hand, you had this pure evil. And to me, I think it sort of goes hand in hand, and that's why we call them, the serial killers, because they've got that personality that is sort of above the norm, above what a normal average person is, and they're able to get away with a lot of these things, and they're able to do things that normal people cannot. Now, whether or not, like Lucy was saying, that's just driven by pure evil, I believe that. I believe that he could have been possessed at an early age, because, again, in the book he describes an incident that happened when he was 6 years old, which you have to read it to really fully understand it, and it will blow your mind of the reaction that a 6-year-old had done after that. And so, in order to be that way at that young age, I think there had to have been something that had went on. I don't think it was the way that you were brought up, or I think it was possession. I think it was pure evil that fueled his fire, and his intellectual and his charismatic attitude and persona helped him get through, and to help him to actually commit these horrible crimes. I mean, that's what I got from when I read that movie. I mean, Silence of the Lambs was the first thing that hit me as soon as I was reading that book.
Absolutely.
Mateo, what do you think?
If there's anything I've studied besides paranormal, it's serial killers. And H.H. Holmes he's an old name to me. He, for some reason, like Jeff said, he's very unknown to a lot of people who even study the subject. But there's very rarely a person who will, dedicate themselves. He from what I understand, he didn't lavish in his money. He spent it so he could kill people. And it's very rare to find somebody that driven just to do that. And Mr. Anthony, I quite agree. It's almost an extra powered sense of damage he wanted to cause. He's from a young age, he prepared everything in his life and did things in his life to where he could do that, spending tons of money on rooms and hotels and properties and stuff just so he can do that. And that, to me, I think that requires a little extra help. Out of all the serial killers, Ted Bundy, anybody you want to think of, they all had day-to-day jobs. There was no rich serial killers, but this guy dedicated his life. He knew he needed money to get this type of thing done, and he did it. He went full-fledged. He dedicated his life to it.
Every aspect of what Herman Mudgett did was based around being this horrible person. His job, and at that time in the late 1800s, there was a lot of medical research going on. They were doing a lot all over the country, and I think all over the world. And so one of his jobs, not jobs, but something that he created was basically collecting bones from graveyards and selling them to medical institutions. And so that's what he did during the day, and, God knows what he did at night. And so his whole life was engulfed with horror, with evil, with hatred, and death. It could have warped his mind. Who knows? There could be so many theories out there, but it engulfed his entire life. I don't think there was any sort of quote-unquote downtime with him. He was always in that realm.
Absolutely.
One other thing.
The goal.
Right.
One other thing that is kind of scary about this whole thing is that you get a sense that this guy he totally enjoyed what he was doing.
Absolutely, and even if it wasn't so much an enjoyment, what he did had little effect on him. He didn't care. He was like, right on, let's go. Next one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. It was just you going to a coffee shop and getting coffee. That's how he felt as, killing a 12-year-old girl.
Do you think that's kind of a lent from his medical profession? Do you think he deluded himself into thinking that it was more of a study of torture and death, or do you think he just loved it?
I think he may have justified his actions in, and this is only my guess. I'm not Jeff Mudgett, so I don't know the full story, but just from reading the book, it could be that, he sort of probably maybe have justified the killings in order to better elevate medical research. That could have been his mentality on it.
That's what he
Jeff
seems
kind of
to
Jeff kind of touched on it. Well, Jeff kind of touched on one chapter in the book, and it's a chapter, and it has to do with a bullfighter and bullfighting. And the things that he does in this chapter, when you're reading it, it's almost like you almost are sympathetic when you see what not about what he's done, but his reasoning. He's doing something because he can almost see the plight of the bull. And he kind of justifies what he's doing. So this guy went back and forth. I mean, at one point, it's like, okay, it's just like combing his hair. He's just going to do a murder here. No problem. No remorse, nothing. But then again, you get this one chapter where it's like he's almost like sympathetic towards the bulls in the bullfight ring. So this guy was all over the place. I mean, this just was, I do agree with you, Anthony. I almost think this guy had to be possessed.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. That type of drive to do that so callously.
Right.
Well, I hope you guys get to go with him when he goes and investigates again. I really hope you guys get to go.
Well, I'm going to beg like crazy. I want to get us both in there.
If not both, at least you go, Lucy.
Well, no, I'm going to beg like crazy, trust me. I mean, I can't live in the city and not go there. I mean, it's just so fascinating because the area where it's at, it is, like Jeff describes it, it's a depressed area of the city. But this post office, you drive past it, and it's just a normal post office. And it looks like any other post office, but just the thought of knowing what has happened there, it just makes it totally fascinating. And then when you read the section, when you read about what happened to Jeff down there, I am convinced that it is definitely haunted. And being a paranormal investigator, boom, I got to go.
Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time and answering my call, and thanks for another great show.
Thank you, Mateo.
No,
Thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Mateo, did you get to listen to the first part of the show?
Yes, sir. I kicked the kids out and gave them to Mom, so I got to listen.
Well, great.
Every word.
Great. We appreciate you. Thanks for calling in, Mateo.
No problem. Have a good night, you guys.
You
Good night.
Too. Good night.
Good night.
Okay. So, all right, Lucy, are you ready?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Okay. All right. I've been sort of biting my tongue for the last 5 days, about 6 days. we're going to talk about a topic that struck a nerve with Lucy and I. We know Sharon Coyle, who is the proprietor and the owner of Rolling Hills Asylum. She's a dear, dear friend of ours. We love her to death, no pun intended. We love Rolling Hills. We love all the spirits that are within that home there. I've gone there a few times, and I fell in love with the place. And Sharon is such a great host, and she strives so hard every minute of the day to make that place better, to keep it so immaculately clean, to fix the repairs that need to be repaired in that place in order to keep it open so that, investigators like us can go there and further our reporting and our search into the paranormal field. And, I've said this before on other shows that I commend her on her efforts. And, ever since I met her about a year and a half ago, we've always been in contact, and I've always tried to give when I can to her and donate, and Lucy and I both have done that. And we are always trying to schedule when we can get back up there and investigate again and be with her. I remember when we were there, I think it was last September, she had just gotten this old radio that she wanted to put in the place to help dress it up. It was, I believe, of the period and time of Rolling Hills when it was active. And my brother-in-law and I had, helped bring this into the place and, try and turn it on. And, we had a lot of fun with her. And so I fell in love with Sharon. She's a great person. But we learned of an incident that has happened at Rolling Hills that struck a nerve with me, and I am completely disgusted. She had emailed us over the weekend and let us know the information, and we had been conversing back and forth and discussing it. And, I'm sure this may not be news to some people right now in chat or who are listening right now, but I've heard her on interviews this week on other radio shows, and while she was able to get across to the listeners and the audience of what happened, personally, I feel as though a lot of these, radio hosts and such, and Lucy, I'm going to say it, really didn't care. I could have easily have had, and Lucy and I could have easily have called Sharon right now and had her on, but I didn't, because I want to get across to everybody, and I think Sharon is a little too nice. I think she's too sweet of a person. Believe me, she can get nasty when she wants to be. But I really wanted to get a point across, and I wanted to get a point across to not only the fans and paranormal investigators and the people who are in the paranormal world, but I'm directing this towards the quote-unquote paranormal celebrities out there. And that includes everybody. Now, when things happen, I don't necessarily, then categorize everybody because of some one thing that bad happened. So I'm not condemning all paranormal celebrities or quote-unquote paranormal celebrities out there. But I'm directing this towards them for two reasons. One, a lot of these paranormal celebrities and television shows about ghost hunting or paranormal investigating have gone to Rolling Hills Asylum. And it is now Friday night, and this incident has been across the wire all over, and I'll get to what the incident was, has been across the Internet. And I have, and Lucy, I don't know if you can back me up on this, and I'll let you answer. I have not heard anybody come out in complete defense or in complete support of Sharon Coyle on this. They have all gone to that place. They have all benefited from going and investigating and doing the shows there, but I have not once heard anybody say that they were going to step up and help Sharon in this plight. Lucy, have you heard anybody?
No, not at all. The incident, it's been on the Internet. People have talked about it. And not one person, not one paranormal celebrity has come out, like you said, and given a solid support to Sharon. It's almost like
what I mean
like,
is, and go ahead, Lucy. I'm sorry.
Well, it's almost like that. Like, okay, yeah, it happened. You know, we know it happened, and it's just sad to me. The whole situation is just very, very sad.
Well, I've heard Nick Roth from Ghost Adventures mention that he was disgusted by it, and he feels completely sorry for the incident, and he does support Sharon, and he has promised and has said that he doesn't do any of this. He does not even think about doing any of that. So I commend him on that. But what I'm getting at is I'm not hearing anybody coming up and saying, you know what, and I think probably Sharon can verify it. I don't think anybody has called her and said, you know what, if you need any help, let me know. If I know who they are, and maybe I can help you, with a lawyer, or do you need any money to, sort of compensate you for what you had to fix and clean after that? I haven't heard any of that, and I don't know if Sharon is in chat right now, but I haven't heard her say that yet to me or to us. And that's my point. That's one of the points that I want to make. But the other is that I've heard everybody talking about banning these two idiots. And again, I'll get to who they are in a minute. They've talked about banning them, but in a very polite way, sort of like, they should be, they shouldn't go to those events or any events. Maybe people should think twice about it. But I haven't heard anybody come out and say, you know what, that's it. Wherever, the people that I know in this field, in this community, in the paranormal world, I'm going to tell them to make sure that they don't invite these two to any events, or that I don't include them on any conventions or anything like that. I haven't heard one person say that. Lucy and I do this radio show, and it's a small radio show. We're not on FM radio or anything like that. And it's kind of odd and weird that here we are, the underdogs, the little people, screaming about what has happened to Sharon Corlin at Rolling Hills, and yet the people who can probably make a big of a difference out there are not really doing anything. And to me, I think that they're afraid of what possibly could happen to them, or afraid of getting involved, and I think it's disgusting and just shameful. So I'm going to explain what happened, okay? Kane Hodder, who I'm sure folks out there may know the name or may not know the name. I mean, to me, he's not a celebrity. I don't know. Lucy, do you consider Kane Hodder a celebrity?
Nope, not at all.
I mean, he's a glorified stuntman in my eyes. Kane Hodder was the man who played Jason in the Friday the 13th movies, and I believe it was 7, 8, 9, and 10. He played some other character on another movie, which I really don't care about right now, but mostly his work is being a stuntman. So just picture the guy behind the mask in Friday the 13th, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That's who we're talking about, Kane Hodder. How he became a celebrity, I have no idea. But he had opened and started his own paranormal group, which I'm not going to mention here because I don't want to give him any promoting. And apparently there's been a book that was written. Actually, two books. One is about his autobiography, which, again, who cares? I don't want to hear about it. He was a character in a movie. Who cares? And the second book was written by the author of the first book, but the second book was written under the idea of here's what went on in the background of making and writing the first book, which is silly to me. But anyway, this gentleman, Michael Aloisi, who, well, actually, I don't want to call him a gentleman. Michael Aloisi is the author. So we've got Kane Hodder and Michael Aloisi. And in the second book, which talks about the sort of making of the biography book of Kane Hodder, there's a chapter in that book. And again, I'm not going to name the book because I really don't want to promote it, even though what I'm talking right now is, sort of bad publicity. It's still publicity in anyone's mind. But I have to talk about this incident in order to get my point across. And so there's one chapter in the book, and the chapter is titled right now. It's titled, Dear Sharon and the Ghost of Rolling Hills, I am so, so sorry. That's the title of the chapter in the book. Sharon didn't know any of this until one of her friends had told her that this was in the book. And so this just happened not too long ago that she discovered it and read the book. Actually, she had said to us that she reached out to Michael Eloisi to ask for a copy of it since they were there, at her place. And Michael Eloisi has said to her, sorry, I don't have any copies. So she basically had to go out and buy the book herself. Now, Sharon Coyle, last June, in June 2011, paid for and created an event around Kane Hodder. And it was a paranormal investigating event where folks could sign up and pay to investigate Rolling Hills Asylum and have Kane Hodder there as sort of the quote-unquote celeb investigator. And she paid him good money to come and host this event. They had about, I think she had mentioned, it was a small group of people or attendees. I think it was like 30, and paid for him to come out, brought him to the place, the location, Rolling Hills Asylum. I think it was, Lucy, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was the night before the actual investigation event, and brought him to the place. They wanted to go inside and check it out by themselves. It was Michael Eloisi and Kane Hodder. And Sharon said, yeah, sure, go ahead. She figures that, they're celebrities. She can trust them. She doesn't have to worry anything about it. So she let them go into the place. They came out. They went back to the hotel where the other investigators were staying, and that's where the sort of event was happening before the actual investigation at Rolling Hills. And then proceeded the next day to have that event and the investigation and everything else. Well, we come to learn now that Kane Hodder and Michael Eloisi basically have no respect for Rolling Hills, because what they did inside of Rolling Hills the night before that investigation, in my eyes, is complete and utter disrespect for Sharon, for Rolling Hills Asylum, and for everyone who cares about paranormal investigating. I'm going to read you just maybe the first two sentences, or it's probably maybe one run-on sentence. Or no, I'm sorry, it's two sentences from the first paragraph of this chapter. And here goes. It is with great regret that I must write this entry. Yet at the same time, I do admit it is funny as hell. To fully understand this entry without me having to go into Kane's psychology, you might want to read the chapter, What a Pisser, in Kane's biography, and then they named the book, which I'm not going to name. In case you haven't, let's just say that Kane has, he is like a dog. He likes to mark his territory. This is the first two sentences of the chapter about, and it's titled, Dear Sharon and the Ghost of Rolling Hills, I'm so, so sorry. Basically, what happened the night before the investigation was that Kane Hodder and Michael Eloisi peed all over Rolling Hills Asylum. They pissed inside two of the closets in one of, Lucy, what was the gentleman's room name? I can't remember right now. George's room. If anybody has investigated at Rolling Hills, it's in George's room. There's two closets and the doors that face each other. Kane went in one closet and Michael Eloisi went in the other and pissed. Now, Sharon has a bathroom in the place. It is an outdoor potty that you can use. They were the only ones in this place. They were not locked and chained inside this place. I don't understand how they find it to be funny, as he's describing in here. I do admit it is funny as hell, to piss inside two closets up in George's room. Now, not only did they piss inside those two closets, but Kane Hodder, okay, the so-called celebrity, Kane also pissed inside the morgue sink down in the basement, I believe, right, Lucy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Pissed inside the morgue sink in the basement. Then left it there. Didn't figure maybe to wipe it up. Didn't figure to say, Sharon, I'm so sorry. You know, I have a bladder problem, this or that. Nothing. They left the place, went back the next day. Now, the piss is still there. The investigators are now investigating the place, and they go into George's room, and towards the end of investigating George's room, one of the attendees opens up the closet door, and they're looking at this, and the smell and the stench, because it's in June, of this pee that's still on the floor, they're trying to figure this out. Some of them are saying possibly it could be some paranormal thing, maybe it's ectoplasm. And Kane and Michael are in this room as well. And none of them confessed. None of them said anything. None of them pulled Sharon aside. Nothing. They spent the rest of the night investigating the place. At the end of the night, you know, Sharon is still upset about this because she's trying to figure out who would do this. Now, she's got volunteers that work in that place, and she doesn't question them at all because she trusts them. She knows them. They are good people. They are, I believe she had mentioned there was a couple that was in there that she knows very well that would not do this. They've been there every single day. And so she's just trying to figure this out. And I'm sure in her mind, she's questioning everybody now, you know, everybody who attended or, you know, just trying to figure this whole thing out. And she's standing there with Kane and with Michael, and they're actually communicating back to her, yeah, you know, I don't know. I don't know who could have done that. That's so weird. That's so odd. And with a straight face, not once confessing to anything, not once telling her anything. In the book also, too, in this chapter, I just want to read the end part. And the only reason why I'm reading this because I want to show the full stupidity and, you know, how much of a bad dog someone can be. This is towards the end of this chapter. The rest of the night, all I could think about was not getting caught or how I would act as if someone asked me if I did it. Amazingly, no one did. Kane and I even had a talk with Sharon alone about how horrible that was that someone did such a thing. I just stood there shaking my head as Kane was so believable. I almost forgot that it was him and me. When we left that night, I exploded into laughter the second we pulled out of the parking lot. Kane joined me as he knew exactly what I was laughing about. We never did get caught, and I doubt anyone even suspected that it was us. Guess the secret is out now. At least I don't have to live with the guilt of it now. And to Sharon and the ghost of Rolling Hills, I really am sorry. If I ever go back there, I'll help clean up anything you need, and I promise to only pee outside. I don't believe that this guy has the balls, and I'm going to say it. I don't believe he has the balls to write this at the end of this chapter, basically saying, I'm sorry, but in the same breath, laughing hysterical as they're leaving the place, and then has the nerve to say, at least I don't have to live with the guilt of it now. So he relieved himself in the closet and now is relieving himself of the guilt. I think it's sick and disgusting. I think everybody out there who is listening to this right now, I'm going to put a call to action out to everybody who cares about the paranormal world and the paranormal field and investigating at locations like this. Because you know what? Sharon can turn around right now and close the place. Close it up, lock the doors, and, you know, fly back to California or go back to her hometown and forget about it all. You know, I don't think anybody right now in the day and age of the economy has the money to buy that place and open it up. Isn't that a loss to us all? Isn't that a loss now that we've lost that one place? Now imagine that going around the country and happening to other paranormal locations. Lucy, who were you talking to this week?
I talked to Wanda Kay from Bobby Mackey's, and we did discuss the incident. And to quote Wanda, Wanda said, I'm sorry, but I don't have any patience for stupid people and the ignorant things they do. This could happen anywhere. These are places that have a history. These places are basically, in the case of Rolling Hills, this is Sharon's home. This is her home. How someone can go in knowingly, do something like that, and just stand there and not even admit to it and think that it's funny and laugh about it afterwards is beyond belief. It is absolutely despicable.
We've heard stories, Lucy and I both heard stories from a lot of locations where, things have been stolen or things have been taken or broken, and I'm not saying that these are other paranormal celebrities. Actually, nobody knows how these things have happened because, by the graciousness of the owners that own these locations, they let us paranormal investigators roam free and do what we want to do and do what we need to do and do what we're set to do out there is investigate the paranormal. They don't, put us under lock and key and handcuff themselves to us so that everywhere we go, they go and they have to watch us. They trust us. They trust what we're doing. And, what's even worse and what's sad is that, we all put these in, Lucy had mentioned this earlier in the week, that we put these celebrities up on a pedestal and we think so highly of them. And we think that the air around them is sort of smelling like roses. Well, you know what? They're all like us. They're all the same people. A lot of these times when they're, you see these paranormal television shows or movies or whatever, in a few years, nobody's going to know them. Nobody's going to know these folks anymore because the shows are going to end and that's it. I respect what they do, but you know what? I'm not going to treat them as though that they are, the untouchables. And for this cane hodder and this, poor author, Michael Aloisi, who thinks it's funny to piss in a haunted location and then write about it in a book so bluntly, to put it in there and to talk shit on both sides of your mouth by saying that you're sorry and then on the other hand saying, but you found it very funny, is despicable. So like I was saying before, I want to put out a call to action to everybody that's listening. Anybody who deals with any paranormal events at any locations, if you're an owner of a location, if you are planning an event or convention with Kane Hodder or Michael Aloisi, I would highly call you to please remove them from your list. Do not invite them to any of your locations. If you're a friend of theirs on Facebook, unfriend them. The only way that anything is going to happen and change is that something big happens to these two idiots. That everyone shows them basically what they did and how we're not going to take it anymore. I reached out to Michael Aloisi earlier this week to get him on the show. And I asked him simply, we're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about, the incident and what happened at Rolling Hills, and I'd like you to come on to explain yourself. He has refused to go on other radio shows. He promised another radio show and then backed out actually a minute before the show went on the air. And so I figured, why the hell not? I'm going to reach out to him myself. So we reached out to him and asked him, and he replied back basically saying that his answer is written in the book. So what we're going to take from that is that his answer is he doesn't give a shit. The whole I'm sorry, I'm so sorry as his title for the chapter is BS then, because he's saying he's sorry and then he's saying how funny it was and how much he laughed and, poor me, Cain made me do it is one part in this chapter. Cain made me pee in the bathroom. Really? How old are you? I'm really sick. I'm really disgusted at this, and I'm really ashamed that a lot more people are not coming in support of Sharon. Sharon has cleaned up the mess that these two dogs made in her closet and in the sink. She had to pay good money to have it sterilized, cleaned and sterilized, her own money. So basically paid them to come to this event and then paid to have them clean the piss that they left in her place. On top of that, now she's trying to bring them to court. The woman Sharon, when I talk about the woman for the past, I think it's been a week and a half now, has not had running water in her home because she's had problems with, I think, her water line or the well. And so she has not had water. She has had to go to friends, public places to get water, to use the bathroom, to shower or bathe, or to drink. She has no money. So she has no money for lawyers. So a couple of things. If anybody out there knows of a lawyer that can contact Sharon Coyle, and she's on Facebook or at the Rolling Hills website, which is rollinghillsasylum.com, reach out to her and possibly do some pro bono work or something to help her. She has no money at all, and the only way to do this for free, I think she had said to us, was that she has to actually travel to the states in which they live at. And so Kane lives in California, and Michael Aloisi lives in Massachusetts. So then she still has to spend money to travel to these states in order to prosecute them for free. She wants to do this. I've reached out to Sharon. Lucy and I have reached out to her and are trying to persuade her to create a donation website so that all of us who care about her and care about Rolling Hills can actually donate some money, if it's $1, $2, whatever it is, just to get the money to do this. I haven't heard from her in regards to it. She was thinking about doing something else, but reach out to her. Ask her if she needs any support. Mostly it's monetarily now because I think she really is fired up and she really wants to take them on. And I want to help her. I really do. I can't afford to do it all by myself, and Lucy can't either. And so we're going to give as much as we can, but we're asking everybody else out there, and more so to the paranormal celebrities out there who have worked with Sharon, who have had shows on that place, to reach out to her and say, hey, you know what, do you need any help? I can lend you something. I can give you something. I'm asking everybody out there if they could do that, because I don't want to see these two idiots get away with this, because apparently this is not the first place that they've done this at. Lucy, you found something, correct?
Yeah, I was listening to another show, and one of the other callers had called in, and apparently Kane has, he was working on a film, and in one of his co-stars' dressing rooms, he decided that he actually went in there and he relieved himself in his co-star's dressing room. This is not the action of a normal person. This is the action of an idiot. This is the action of a person that people are putting on a pedestal. Like Anthony said, he's a stuntman. He's an actor that's in back of a mask. I don't understand the hero worship that is being lavished on this person. And not to group him in with other, celebrities or whatever. There's good people out there, and you know what, I really didn't know about the Nick Groff comment, but you know what, good going, Nick. I mean, I know Nick. Nick is a great guy, and you know what, I really appreciate the fact that he did that. But this person, Kane Hodder, it is unbelievable to me that a man, a grown man, will do something like this. And people still are like, oh, wow, he's so cool. What is so cool about a grown man that goes and relieves himself in such a personal area, in a person's dressing room, in Rolling Hills? If you've ever been to Rolling Hills, if you've ever talked to Sharon, when we were there, it was so obvious how much this woman loves this place. It is so obvious how dear this place is to her. And just watching her talk about Rolling Hills and watching her describe her relationship with this building and with the spirits that are there is something that it's a beautiful thing. And for someone, a so-called celebrity that she paid to come in here and to do something like that is literally, it is just unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. There's been quite a few people, quite a few celebrities that have benefited from going to Rolling Hills. They've, featured it on shows. They've done things. These are the people that need to step up now And all we're saying is that, you know what, you need to do something. Step up. Rolling Hills and Sharon have been there when you needed them. Well, you know what? She needs you now.
And if this continues and this keeps up and nobody does anything about it, all these haunted locations are going to start to close down. They're going to start to change management, and who knows if we're what kind of management is going to be the next time. They could be doubling the prices now at locations going in. They could be changing the rules and regulations of what we can and cannot do at these locations. It disgusts me that people do this, and not just Kane Hodder and Michael Aloisi, but it's the folks out there who take advantage of these locations when they go there. It boggles my mind that they do this. I don't know what benefit they're getting from it. Yeah, everybody wants a piece of the place, or they want some evidence to take back with them as far as a piece of the brick or whatever. But you know what? Everybody has that attitude. You're taking a piece of the brick, the wall is going to come down. Then what? Then what do we do? It has to stop. This has to stop. And if nobody does anything about it, people are going to think, you know what? I can piss in here. Kane Hodder did it. Nobody's going to know anything. And where does it end? When does it end? When does it stop? When are we going to stop defiling and defacing these haunted locations? Even I believe now the spirits have reacted to this. They've come out and said that how much that they've hated it, and I believe Sharon has said that now there's more activity at these areas in the building, specifically where these two dogs peed. That the spirits are responding back. And I believe that the night of, or actually it was a few hours before that investigation, that event that Kane was at, that someone had received something on their spirit box saying, I think it was water. I think it was saying water room, or water closet, help, or something like that. So before the actual incident even happened. So they knew about it. They were warning these attendees of what was going on. It just is, I can't say it enough. It's disgusting. I'm so fed up and tired of the attitudes that these people have. And again, these celebrities, these so-called celebrities that they think they can do whatever the hell they want and get away with it, and then write it in a book, in print, in black and white, and think it's okay. Well, you know what? I hope everybody bans the book. I hope nobody buys it. I hope he loses all credibility, because in my eyes, and I'm sure in Lucy's eyes, that that's it. I'm done with anything that Kane, even though I've never dealt with him. In my eyes, he was never a celebrity, so I never wanted to be bothered with him. But I hope people who have him on the lineup, and I believe Bobby had mentioned earlier that he was on Scarefest. He's going to be at Scarefest. I hope the people at that place really take him off that lineup, like Bobby was saying, and really show him that nobody's going to take the crap or the piss that he's dishing out.
It has to stop. It really has to stop. And just the one other thing, like you mentioned a little bit, Anthony, these are people just like we are. It's it's one thing to have your heroes, and it's one thing to admire somebody, but don't put them on a pedestal. Don't excuse what they've done just because they're a celebrity. It doesn't excuse being a normal human being. It doesn't excuse actions that you wouldn't tolerate from anyone else. If just somebody had come in there and done it, everybody would be up in arms. And just because it's a two-bit actor and some guy that's written a book, it's okay. It's not okay.
So I wanted to promote Rolling Hills Asylum for just a second, because Sharon Coyle actually has a competition, a contest that's going on this year for 2012, and I think it's really cool. So if you pay for a quarantine event, and quarantine event means basically that there's no one else but you and your group, and I think it is a number of 10, I believe, a max of 10. If you paid for a quarantined event at Rolling Hills Asylum between now and I believe it's at the end of September, and you catch evidence, you catch anything, EVPs, any video, anything like that, and you send it to Sharon Coyle via the website or her email address, or I think you can probably even do it on Facebook. She will put you in the running to be the best of the best investigator, and I think that's a great privilege to have. It's sort of a quote-unquote crown over everybody's head in your group if you are pronounced the winner of this for 2012. You've got bragging rights for this for the entire year, and she's going to try and do this every year, depending on how it's sort of welcomed in the group and how many entries she gets. So I really encourage everybody to go out there, go to rollinghillsasylum.com and check out her page, check the schedule, see if you guys are able to schedule an event there, a quarantine event. Believe me, Lucy and I have done a show on this before, and we've shared some evidence. The place will not disappoint you. It is full. It is not. I mean, it's full, if anything, full of EVPs. And actually, Sharon had posted some pictures that she recently took in the place. And one of them is a shadow person that you can fully see the legs bent, and it's not just a mist of black. You actually see the outline of the person's pants. Not sure if it's Roy or not, but who's one of the famous spirits there at the place. But it's an awesome picture, so check it out. I mean, if you really want to get some evidence, some really good paranormal evidence, I highly suggest going there. And Mark and Debbie Constantino, who we've had on the show before, has said that is their number one place to get evidence from. So I highly recommend going there and trying out for the best of the best contest that she has running right now. I think it'll be great. She's going to promote your group. She's going to promote your evidence on her website, and there's so many folks that go to that website, including, real paranormal celebrities out there who are in communication with her and who check that site out. So it's good exposure for you and your group. So I just wanted to get that out there, and you can reach out to Sharon Coyle at the rollinghillsasylum.com website and reach out to her there in regards to booking and scheduling an event. Or, like I said before, if you want to reach out to her and possibly maybe donate something. She's always looking for volunteers, too, to help with cleanup or with repairs or anything like that. So if you're in the New York area or around the Niagara area, the Niagara Falls area, she would welcome volunteer work and help and support for any kind of construction. The summer's coming up, and so it's a great time right now to do a lot of these repairs, so I'm sure she will be grateful for that. So, I just wanted to give a gift back to Sharon for all the horrible things that have happened to her lately and the struggle that she's going through right now. My heart breaks for her, and I wish her well.
I totally agree. If you get the chance, please, reach out to Sharon. If you get the chance to go investigate, you've got to go. I mean, it's probably one of the best places that we've investigated. I know it's like in our top places that we've gone, and we're definitely going to go back there. But please, reach out to Sharon right now and support her. She really does need it right now.
And Bobby Brooks just posted up in the chat the number to Scarefest, which I'll say it on the air right now. The number to Scarefest is area code 859-576-5517. I would really love, Lucy and I would really love for everybody out there to call them and suggest that they take Kane Hodder off of their list of attendees as quote-unquote paranormal celebrity attendee for that event. I think Lucy and I are going to give them a call as well and reach out to them and suggest that as well. So thank you, Bobby, for posting that, and we hope you do call as well. So thank you for suggesting that as well.
Okay. So, Anthony, let's move on. And
let's move on to some happier things. Okay.
Yeah. Right now, I'd like to announce the Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week. And this week, our fan is actually someone I would consider a celebrity. It's Noah Tysick of Pontiac, Michigan. Congratulations, Noah, for being our Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week. Noah has supported the show. He's called us a couple times. He's absolutely a great, great, great person, a fine example of someone who is involved in the paranormal. He's the author of Exorcist Rising. He is a member of Nexus Paranormal. He actually is a professor of English Composition and Humanities, and Noah is the author of a half a dozen books, including 2 writing and research handbooks. So what we'd like to do right now is to thank you, Noah, for being a great support, and congratulations on being our Fan of the Week.
Congrats, Noah. And Noah has been, Noah has called in a couple of times on the show, and he's added such great insight to the paranormal field. And one of the episodes that we had, he actually talked about the Edgar Allan Poe house, and I thought it was fascinating what he was describing. So congrats, Noah. We thank you for being a listener and being a fan, and our payback to you is for Radio Fan of the Week. So thank you.
Okay, well, I guess that's it. What an explosive show. You know what? We hope that this show both entertained you and informed you. I want to thank Jeff Mudgett for joining us tonight. As always, thank you, Anthony, for helping to make this show what it is. Thank you to all of you, our listeners, fans, friends, and family, for all of your support and for making this so rewarding. You know, even though this show is a labor of love for us, we are first and foremost paranormal investigators. We wouldn't be doing this show if it were not for our interest in the paranormal. We have made so many good friends because of our investigations. We've been lucky enough to visit some of the most amazing and historic places. When a member of our paranormal family is disrespected, no matter what, all the members of the community are disrespected. This field is full of wonderful, good, and honest people. When something happens to a member of the paranormal community, we feel it's our duty to speak out, and I think we proved that tonight. We will not back down from anyone who discredits or places any negative light on this field. We hope you feel the same way too. Thank you for your support, not just for us, but for everyone in this field. Okay? Next week, we'll be doing this show live from Philadelphia. Okay? I'm going to be doing tarot card readings live on the air Friday, May 25th. So please make sure you call the show and let me read for you. Come on, let's have some fun, okay? And why are we going to be in Philly, you ask? Well, in case you missed it, we're going to be there to investigate one of our favorite places, Eastern State Penitentiary. Now, unfortunately, we cannot broadcast live from ESP, but of course, we'll be doing our review show, and that's going to be on June 1st. So, on that note, dear friends, thank you. Have a paranormal week, and good night.
Good night, everybody.